Hello, and welcome to the Legal Growth Podcast, where we dive into the strategies, challenges, and success stories shaping the future of law firms. I'm your host, Aaron Fulk, and together with Legal Growth Partners, we'll bring you in-depth conversations with top legal professionals, industry innovators, and firm leaders. Our goal is simple: share practical insights, innovative strategies, and real-world advice to help your law firm scale, adapt, and thrive. Whether you're navigating growth challenges or looking to boost your business development, you are in the right place. So let's dive in. This week, our guest is Jaclyn Newman. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
For 2 seconds, I got in my head about your name again, which I've never been. I accidentally put an extra letter in there yesterday for no reason. And so she gave me the pronunciation, and I was just right then, I'm like, yeah, okay, I said it right. So,
Yeah.
You said people put E's in your name sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes they call me Jaclyn.
But it's Jaclyn.
Yeah, Jaclyn.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Glad I did it right. But then, whenever you mess something up, then you always mess it up and get in your head about it. So give us a quick overview of how you chose law and the specialty of law you practice.
Yeah, so I really wanted to help people when I went to college, and I decided, I'm going to get a psychology degree because I really want to help people. But then I realized I really don't like science. This is too much for me. So I actually joined a pre-law fraternity where I went to college at Binghamton University and just started talking to different people about the legal career and why they want to become a lawyer. I talked to people who were lawyers, and I just felt that it was a great career path to help people. And it also provided a ton of different options and different opportunities. If you don't like one area of the law, you can switch to the other one. And I initially wanted to go into public interest. I was really excited to help people and do all these things. And then I went to Cornell and I had all these student loans. And I was like, all right, I think I have to go into private practice. And from there, I actually thought I wanted to go into corporate law in law school because I had a professor. I loved learning about the corporate side of things from him, like M&A and securities law. But I realized when I got to private practice in big law, when I first started out, that I actually really loved litigation. And I loved, diving into the facts of a case and developing a story and advocating for a position, tying the legal research to the facts of the case. So I quickly realized I did not like the corporate side of things, and I really loved litigation. And then I actually started off my first year as an attorney. I got staffed on this case that was on a fast-tracked arbitration, and it was just the most fun experience I've ever had in my life. It was a super boring accounting and valuation dispute, but just being in the trial with all the different lawyers, and it's really about calling the other side out on their lies. So I just really loved how I learned that, you can take a really super boring thing like accounting and it just becomes so much fun in the context of a trial. So from there, I was like, I just want to do trials. I want to do arbitrations. And I just continued to get those opportunities. And I really like the complex commercial litigation side of things because every case that you're working on is completely different from the last one. So you get, the excitement of diving into a new issue and also, a likelihood of going to trial, which I love. So yeah, that's kind of the quick recap of how I got into this particular area of the law.
I love that. I think the trial part would be the most fun too, honestly, right? There's a reason that Law and Order SVU has been on for 26 years. And I think a big piece of that is that trial part, right? When it all comes together and makes sense at the end and they do the catch-up moments.
Yeah, and it's like sorry to go on, but you're just kind of in this world for like weeks where you're just only focusing on this one thing and you get so invested in it with the people, and it's so much fun. But
if people don't have a lot of attorney friends, I'm lucky that I do, but it is like, they're like, everything's off while you're in trial. It's just trial. Don't bother me. I'll talk to you in a few weeks. And it's so interesting to watch from the outside. Yeah. All right. So every attorney seems to have a memorable first case, which maybe that one is yours, but do you have any other funny stories or something surprising, like a memory that you were like, okay, yeah, this will always be with me through my career?
Well, that first case was really fun. But basically something that happened recently was earlier this year when I second chaired my first jury trial. I had done jury trials before and other trials, but this was the first time where I was actually one of the lead trial attorneys, taking a ton of witnesses, arguing motions to the judge rather than just kind of supporting the other attorneys leading the charge. So that was one of the best experiences I've had in my career so far. And I guess from that trial, I remember I did my first cross-examination of a pretty high up executive engineer on the other side. And I was so nervous because I was like, I don't know anything about engineering, and this guy's going to have all the answers and he's going to stump me. but he ended up just saying yes to pretty much everything I said. He gave us the most incredible admissions. And my team was like, this was the best cross-examination I've ever seen. And it was just such a cool experience to just, because I was so nervous leading up to it for months. And I was like, I know this is going to be tough. So that whole trial was an amazing experience. We won. Every day was an amazing day at trial. But that particular cross-examination was something I'll always remember.
Do you ever have gut feelings when you're choosing the jury that you're like how much of your gut plays into that piece?
Well, it's more of it's a little bit of a science. So you work with a jury consultant and they do all this research on the jurors and advise you on, well, someone who works in this industry maybe wouldn't be the best fit based on the facts of your case. So you have all the parameters like that, but then there is a sort of like, the way this person answered this question, didn't really like that, or just the way their demeanor, even if, they are someone that typically you shouldn't choose based on the research and the analysis. Sometimes you're like, what, this person just seems like they would be a good juror despite all of that. So I will say that does play into it at the end of the day, kind of when you have to make a judgment call.
Yeah.
You do kind of go with your gut because there's only so much you can predict and so much research you can do at the end of the day.
It kind of feels like that's your psychology passion coming back into your law degree too.
Yeah. I feel like, if I did pursue my psychology degree, becoming a jury consultant would be.
Yeah, who knew? I didn't even know that was a job back in the day, right? Nobody tells you some of those cool things. Yeah. What do you feel like has been I feel like every answer is leading into the next question, which is so great. Yeah. So some of these things, I'm probably making you dig for a couple, but what do you feel like has been your biggest growth success story so far?
Well, I do feel like that. I keep going back to this trial earlier in the year, but I do think that was a big growth success story because I really had to do all these things I've never really done before, right? Like I've prepared outlines for all witness examinations, but I've never had to get up there and do so many of them and really think on my feet. I was also just one of the lead decision makers, having to decide on a daily basis our strategy, because your strategy kind of changes every day in trial, even though you go in the beginning with all these ideas about what your strategy is going to be. So I feel like just having to be on my feet so much. The first day I was super nervous, and towards the end I was like, all right, this is like second nature to me now. So I feel like just the repetition over those few weeks of getting up there and speaking constantly, plus just having to make quick strategy decisions that, multi-million-dollar decisions on a daily basis. I think both of those things really helped. Even now when I'm not in trial and I'm just advising a client on, strategy on settlement negotiations, or whether we should send this letter or respond this way. I think, doing something with that high of stakes really just helps on a daily basis to kind of make those decisions.
Let me ask you something. You said, he was an engineer. I didn't know about engineering. I'd never done this before, which essentially sounds like a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? Like you don't believe you can do it and you put yourself in this situation. Do you think it was your preparedness, or what was it that got you to the fact that you were like, you killed it? It sounds like, if you wanted to try it.
Yeah, it's preparing, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you kind of know the case better than them, even though because you're living and breathing it. I think the advice I got from the lead trial attorney I was working with was, you just have to ask questions he can't say no to, or that he has to say yes to. So if you just create all of your questions in that way, it's really hard for them, because nobody really likes to lie on the stand. And so and then no one also likes to be perceived as they don't know, or like they're wrong, right? So if you're saying something, they're probably like, okay, you're probably right. So it's kind of the psychology of also leading them into saying something you want them to say. And then also just having the knowledge of the facts of the case. So even if they do say something, that you didn't expect, you have the follow-up questions ready to really, get them to the place that you want them to be. So just really crafting the questions, and then also just having the follow-up questions handy. And I just feel like practicing it over and over and really studying the case, you just get up there and you just know what you need to ask. And, you don't always even follow the outline to a T, because you can so yeah, it's preparedness, crafting the questions, and, knowing how to follow up.
I love that. What do you think your biggest non-legal skill is that has helped you through your career?
Yeah, this was an interesting one. So when I was younger, throughout my elementary through high school career, I was a dancer, and I was on a dance competition team. And so from a young age, I was I had to be very disciplined right after school. On the weeknights, I was at the dance studio, and then on the weekends, we had competitions throughout the year. So I had to learn discipline at a pretty young age. And we also had to be on the stage a lot of the time, kind of, performing. And it wasn't necessarily thinking on your feet because everything is choreographed. But I think the experience of early discipline in my life for so many years, on top of just being on stage and being a performer, has really helped me acquire the discipline needed to be a trial lawyer, as well as, stage presence and knowing how to present yourself to a room of people in a persuasive way. So I think both of those things have helped for my
I love that. I have a dancer and theater kids, and I always see things. I'm like, okay, that's going to help in their adulthood. And
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Especially when you were asking those questions, that probably prepared you way more too, right? Because you're used to being in front of so many people and having all eyes on you.
Yeah, definitely. And it is, going to trial is really like a choreographed dance, right? You know what the questions you're going to ask, the admissions you need to get. And especially when you're doing a direct examination, you're practicing with the witness over and over again. So it is kind of like a performance in a way that you're rehearsing for. So I think that's why I like it so much.
Have you ever seen the musical Chicago?
I have, but a very long time ago.
There's a whole song about how trials a choreographed dance.
Interesting.
So that just made me think of that. They're like, then you do this and we do this. And you'll have to check it out at some point. All right. What, if we're looking at what trends or changes do you see shaping the future of law firms and the future of the career, I guess, in general, like a legal career in general? And what changes or things are you adapting so you stay in front of all of that?
Yeah, so I think AI is the obvious thing that is just really, even in the last few months, right? When I did this trial back in February, I don't think the AI was as good as it is now. And for me, I think the biggest thing it's going to change in the industry is people are going to be able to go to trial more often, right? Clients with smaller monetary claims that previously wouldn't have the funds to pay for all the legal resources to go to trial will now be able to, right? If all of the discovery and the pleadings, if that can all be expedited and more efficient and less costly, then you'll get to trial much quicker and the legal fees will be lower. So I think that's something that I think is a big benefit. I know people are looking at the negatives from AI. Will this replace us? I don't think it's going to replace us. I think it's just going to open up our brains to, one, be able to think more strategically about bigger things instead of getting bogged down, and like needing to find all the typos, right? Or like needing to staff 12 people to do that and get the perfect brief out. And then two, I think it'll just make it a lot easier and cost less expensive for people to actually make it in front of a judge to get their cases heard instead of having to settle for something less than they deserve.
That's such a great answer. I've asked that question a million times on this podcast, and we've often talked about AI, but nobody's really said or had that. I mean, it makes total sense of having more trials, right?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of people talking about maybe we won't need this type of person to look through contracts, but I'm like, but then we need more litigators. Like, that's really interesting. I went to this tech council thing in Kansas City, and they said AI, like to your point, won't necessarily replace people. It'll just make the jobs look different. And then I was like, how will that work in the legal world? And you just made me see it. Yeah. So that was a great answer. Well, amazing. I really appreciate you coming on here, Jaclyn. Thank you so much.
Of course. This was a great conversation. Really liked meeting you and chatting today.
Absolutely. And it's Jaclyn, no E. So thank you for joining us on the Legal Growth Podcast, presented by Legal Growth Partners. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, drop us a review, and share it with your colleagues, because great insights are even better when shared. For more tips and tools to help grow your practice, visit LegalGrowthPartners.com. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, and keep smiling. Thanks so much.
Thank you.